Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Jedi Under Siege. Chapter 8. The green-brown river that flowed sluggishly through the primeval forest was broad and powerful, yet outwardly calm. The current showed not the least bit of disturbance from the titanic struggle of good and evil taking place on Yavin 4. The river hosted numerous life forms, invisible plankton, and carnivorous protozoans, water plants, trees that dangled sharp roots into the flow, and camouflaged predators that disguised themselves as innocuous parts of the landscape. But as blaster shots rang out and the buzz of lightsabers droned through the jungle, other creatures moved in the thick branches of the river and the water itself, creatures trained in using the Force. Rounded reptilian snouts broke the surface of the murky river. Breathing slits rose up, nostrils flaring to draw in welcome oxygen. 3 scaly creatures moved slowly enough that only slight ripples whispered across the water. Settling into position deep in the mud, they sniffed and lay in wait near the path at the river's edge. Their enemies would soon come. Moving stealthily, yet radiating a superiorly confident power, 3 of the Dark Jedi trainees from the Shadow Academy strode through the underbrush, hacking away the dense vines and branches with their lightsaber blades. They reached the riverbank and paused to consult with each other, still searching for their Jedi opponents. Skywalker's Jedi trainees are cowards, one said. Why don't they come out and fight? They all hide in the jungle like terrified rodents. How can they not be afraid of us, one said. We know the power of the dark side. Consulting silently, with only a faint stream of a bubble for communication, 3 of Luke Skywalker's reptilian trainees lunged out of the river, spewing a stream of water at their enemies. They used the Force to summon a hammering flow of the river, a column drenching wetness that reared up like a snake, then splashed down. The Dark Jedi lightsaber blades sizzled and steamed. The 3 Cha hissed and chattered with laughter as they summoned up more and more water. The waterlogged Dark Jedi sputtered and thrashed from side to side as they attempted to summon up dark side powers with which to strike their reptilian opponents. Just then, from the dense shelter of the trees above, a trio of feathered avians left their perches and plunged down. They let out a high, fluting whistle of a battle cry. The Dark Jedi were distracted for a moment, torn between their 2 enemies, when the avians landed on top of them, driving them to the ground and knocking them unconscious. The avians chirped and screeched in victory as the Cha hauled themselves dripping out of the river mud and slogged toward the 3 new captives. Working together, Skywalker's alien trainees removed whip-like vines from the underbrush and lashed the arms and legs of the prisoners together. One of the Cha picked up the discarded Shadow Academy lightsaber, studied the poor construction and unimaginative workmanship. One by one, he tossed the tainted weapons into the river. They splashed and sank without a trace. Meanwhile, the avians crouched over the unconscious captives and used their Jedi powers to probe the minds of the Bracca students. They added strong Force suggestions for making sure their enemies would continue to sleep for a long time. Tione tossed her long white hair behind her to get it out of the way. She would need her vision unobstructed with no distractions. She looked at the other Jedi students with her gleaming mother of pearl eyes. Master Skywalker frequently entrusted her with training these students, and now Tione would do battle. The Yavin 4 Academy had often been a target of the forces of evil, but the true Jedi Knights had won before, and she had no doubt they would win again. She and her students stood on the flat marble slab and broken columns of what had once been an open-air Masasi temple before it was swallowed up by the jungle. This and the place which they had chosen to make their stand. Are you all ready? Tione said. Remember what you have been taught. There is no try. We must succeed in defeating the warriors of the dark side. The students shouted their agreement, looking at her with eyes full of confidence in their abilities and their plan. One of the young women nodded to Tione, took a deep breath, and ran off in the forest in search of the invading Dark Jedi. Within only moments, the young woman cried out, shouting and challenging the trainees of the Shadow Academy. Tione heard a lightsaber sizzle. Branches fell, and then came the sound of footsteps crashing through the forest as her student hurried back toward the trap they had set. Tione gestured silently for the others to prepare themselves. Come back here, Jedi vermin! One of the enemy called, hidden by the thickets. 4 Dark Jedi came plunging through the jungle, bursting into the temple clearing, where the panting student stood on the other side of the flat marble slab hanging above their heads. Teone's student looked defeated. The invader stepped forward. "We will crush your mind with the dark side," one said. "Now," Teone shouted. From their shadowy hiding places, 4 of her special students reached out with the force. In an unexpected, irresistible move, they snatched the 4 lightsabers from their enemy hands. The Dark Jedi cried out in alarm and surprise at losing their weapons. Then Teone and her students emerged from the underbrush and surrounded them. "We don't need your lightsabers to defeat you. We can still flatten you with our power," said one of the first overconfident opponents. "The power of the dark side." All 4 of the enemy Jedi stood in a tight cluster, back to back, raising their hands. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Teone said calmly, letting her pale lips show a brief smile. "You wouldn't want to distract us. A brief calculation or concentration might become a crushing defeat for you." She glanced upward. Her 4 students remained motionless, with their eyes closed, focused on their task. The Dark Jedi looked up and saw the marble slab they thought to be the ceiling of a crumbled temple was completely unsupported. A hovering rectangle of rock, weighing many tons, balanced over their heads. It floated, held by nothing but the power of the Force. Teone's students maintained their concentration. The Dark Jedi swallowed hard. "You can try to escape if you like," Teone said. "Maybe you'll have enough power to subdue all of us with enough left over to catch the block of stone before it falls in your heads. Maybe," she shrugged. "It's your choice, of course, but I wouldn't risk it." The 4 Dark Jedi exchanged glances, unable to find words. Finally, one by one, they lowered their clenched hands and surrendered. Teone heaved a sigh, a quiet but heartfelt sigh of relief. Another tree stood in the forest, short and stunted, with a thick trunk. Branches extended out in a way that, if it looked at a certain height, it had an almost humanoid appearance. One of Master Skywalker's Jedi, a slow-moving, long-lived, plant-like creature. She often went out to spend days in the sunlight, using photosynthesis to drink and nourishment, absorbing minerals from the soil, water from the river, and carbon dioxide from the air. She would spend all day, many days at a time, simply contemplating the Force and her place in the universe. Trees remained live for a long time and did not rush into ill-considered action. Yet at times as this, she could manage to move fast enough. She understood the importance of protecting the Jedi Academy. She had entered into her training to understand the Force, vowing to defend the side of the light. And here she found herself in a clear-cut battle against the Shadow Academy. Dark Jedi enemies coursed through the jungle, searching for victims, but Master Skywalker had taught all the trainees well. The light side students would put up a good fight. The tree-like Jedi stood motionless, waiting, sensing her jungle. She knew her enemies would come to her. She had only to wait. Her roots dug deeper into the soil, drawing in it for greater energy. She felt the sap pulsing through her, boiling in her veins, allowing her to gain the speed for the unwavering action she would require just this once, she hoped. She had chosen her spot well, next to an alien Misasi tree, tall without spreading branches. Its trunk was nestled with vines and dripping with parasitic shelf mushrooms that had tapped into the heartwood and began devouring the great tree from within. The Jedi could tell that this great-grandfather of the tree had lived for centuries and centuries. It was a way of things, the cycle of the Force. As plants grew, they went on to seed and bear their young, and slowly decayed to warm organic matter and fertilize the forest for subsequent generations. She saw how the old Misasi tree leaned, observed the surrounding jungle, and waited. She reached out with the Force subtly, gently, even so that even the adepts of the dark side could not know they were being manipulated. "Come here," she thought, broadcasting it over and over again. And at least one of them would catch the hint. They would think they had detected one of their light side enemies. But it would all be the plant Jedi's doing. After an undetermined period, she did not measure time in small increments. She sensed a clumsy disturbance. 2 attackers from the Shadow Academy storming through the forest, as if the delicate ecosystem was no more than a nuisance that they could eradicate completely, given the chance. The Jedi waited. She had to concentrate. She had to act at the right moment, and not waste time thinking, or else her opponent's opportunity would pass. Curled within the great gnarled branches, a hand-like appendage, was a knobby lightsaber built to accommodate her wooden grip. The 2 Dark Jedi came into the clearing and stopped. And one said, Lord Brackus would be ashamed of you. Lord Zeke would take away your lightsabers. The powers of the dark side are wasted on you. I tell you, I sensed it, said the other. He stepped forward, looking from side to side, studying the quiet jungle. His companions stood next to him, scowling. At that moment, the Jedi used all her stored reserves and acted. She ignited her lightsaber and slashed sideways with her branch arm, like a bent sapling suddenly released to a sap straight again. I am sorry, Grandfather Tree, she said, and her lightsaber blade cleaved through the trunk of the tottering old Massassi tree, severing it from the stump and letting the arms of gravity embrace it. Its wide branches at the top leaned over, and the tree crashed into the two dark Jedi intruders. They had only time to look up with muffled outcry of surprise as a meteor of branches and vines smashed down upon them. The Jedi deactivated her lightsaber, then felt a trembling through her entire wooden body. In one act, she had drained months and months of her energy reserves. She stretched her branches upward toward the sunlight, dug her roots deeper. It would take her a long time to recover from this day.